For perspective on the spiraling violence between Israel and Lebanon, we get two views. Aaron David Miller is a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and a longtime State Department official in both Democratic and Republican administrations. And Hussein Ibish is a senior resident scholar at the Arab Gulf States Institute in Washington. Thank you both for being here. And Hussein, I'll start with you.
Sure.
Lebanon's health ministry says the strikes have killed 492 people, including 35 children and 58 women. What's your assessment of how Israel is conducting this military operation?
Well, it's obviously aimed at not just Hezbollah and its weapons depots, but anything that Israel thinks might be of use to Hezbollah. It's very similar to the doctrine applied in Gaza, where dual-use, triple-use facilities are all targeted, and so are anything that could kind of maybe be on that list. There's a real deference towards authorization rather than non-authorization of strikes, and a willingness to do tremendous harm. Part of it is psychological warfare, part of it is generalized vengeance. Israel's approach to these things is wars between societies, and they want to make sure everybody gets the point and everybody suffers.
Aaron David Miller, how does this move Israel closer to its goal of facilitating the return of some 60,000 people, civilians, to their homes in the north?
You know, it's great to be here with you, and it's always great to be here with Hussein. I'm not sure about the war against society. So I think the Israelis are faced with a legitimate problem, and that is October 8th, Hezbollah decided, for their own reasons, perhaps encouraged by Iran, to become part of the axis of resistance. And in doing so, they struck Israel. We've been living on borrowed time ever since. And Hezbollah understands that it's like Hamas. It's placed the entire population of Lebanon in the dock for its actions. As far as Israel's strategy, I mean, I do raise a concern. I'm not sure the Israelis believe for a minute, frankly, that all this military pressure is going to get Hezbollah to somehow roll over, let alone create a pathway that the Biden administration would very eagerly take advantage of to de-escalate under the able and very talented management of Amos Hochstein, who negotiated a maritime border with 2 years ago with Hamas's and presumably with Iran's acquiescence. I think the Israelis, frankly, I don't think they want a major escalation, which is going to expose their population centers and infrastructure to an enormous amount of destruction. But they are taking a major whack at Hezbollah, and I think they're prepared to continue that, perhaps even without a sustainable objective.
Do you expect Israel to launch a ground operation in southern Lebanon?
Not yet. I do think that, Hezbollah is responsible, for sure, for dragging, yet again, Lebanon and its people into a conflict which is not connected to Lebanese interests, but that's changed now. With the pager explosion, et cetera, I think there are all over 4,000 bombs randomly put all over Lebanon. Killed a lot of people, including children. I think the perspective of a lot of Lebanese has shifted to be more sympathetic to Hezbollah. I think that a land invasion is not yet likely, but Israel may come to find that it cannot create the illusion of security, because that's what they're chasing. And none of this, not the bombing, not some kind of a security barrier they might try to create by seizing and creating a new occupation in a swathe of southern Lebanon, none of it would provide security for northern Israel. In fact, it would mire Israel in yet another open-ended occupation and counterinsurgency in the north as well as in the south. But I do think that it could create, for a short period of time, the illusion of security. And I think it's possible that the Israelis may turn to that if they cannot get the illusion of security through this bombing, which is undoubtedly a form of coercive diplomacy. Clearly, they're trying to force Hezbollah into some kind of formal backdown while degrading their rockets and rocket launchers. But none of that translates into greater security for northern Israel. At most, it buys you time.
Aaron David Miller, what about Iran? You say neither Israel nor Iran wants a full-blown direct conflict, but how might this escalation by Israel into Lebanon, how might this prompt Iran to be more provocative in response?
Well, if in fact you actually got a major escalation, Hezbollah has not yet crossed the key red line, which is the use of their precision-guided missiles, again, which they have hundreds, not thousands, but nonetheless, they have sufficient quantity in order to do tremendous damage to Israeli population centers, infrastructure, the electricity grid. I mean, Israel gets a lot of its water from desal plants. Those would go out. This could become a major nightmare. And remember, Hezbollah has the capacity now to launch 3,000 missiles a day. And summer of 06, in a 34-day war, they launched 3,000 during the entire campaign. Look, the Iranians, I think, want to cause the Israelis as much difficulties as they can. They'd love to see an Israeli occupation of southern Lebanon. They'd love to see the Israelis in the West Bank and in Gaza in perpetuity. But what they don't see is an Israeli and or American strike against Iran proper. And you could end up with that eventuality if, in fact, you got a major Israeli Hezbollah escalation and Iran felt the need to come to Hezbollah's defense. The Israelis and perhaps even the Americans could get involved, and you could see something the Middle East has never experienced before, which is a multi-front war. Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Iran. The Houthis, things got really bad, and the Iranians striking oil targets in the Gulf, which is we know they've done in 2019.
Yeah.
What does de-escalation look like at this point, and what more can the U.S. do, if anything?
I think the U.S. could do a lot to restrain Israel because Israel has achieved early on in this conflict that began right after October 7th escalation dominance. They made it clear very early on, and especially during this year, that they don't mind a broader war that Aaron has described, that of all the parties involved, other than Hamas, which has no ability to influence things really, that Israel is the one that is most interested in a potential war, that they wouldn't mind getting the United States to actually bomb Iranian nuclear facilities through the process Aaron just described. There are a lot of people in Israel who are enthusiastic about that, and a bigger number in the Israeli government who are ambivalent about it. They're concerned about it, but at the same time, they can see upsides, which is why they've been so reckless and so escalatory in recent months. De-escalation looks like Hezbollah backing off with rocket attacks and making maybe some conciliatory noises about decoupling their conflict with Israel from the war in Gaza, which is the one thing they've been harping on, is that they won't change any of their behavior until there's a ceasefire in Gaza. That doesn't actually make any sense from their point of view, except sort of in a very vague ideological way. And it also certainly means the United States restraining Israel. I think both Tehran and Washington, which say, and I think with good reason, they don't want a broader war, have a big responsibility to restrain their allies. And in particular, I think Washington really does need to say to the Israelis in a more open way, if you force a war here because you are the party driving it this time, it wasn't true in 2006, but now it is, you're going to be on your own. We don't rely on us at the UN for more munitions or anything. Our policy has been that the war should not spread. And if it spreads because you insist it must spread for whatever reason, then we're not responsible.
Aaron, in the 30 seconds we have left, is there anything that President Biden could say to Bibi Netanyahu at the UN General Assembly this week that might make a difference?
Yeah, I'll make this brief. In 11 months, the administration, for any number of reasons, some legitimate, some perhaps not, has been reluctant and or refused to impose a single cost or consequence that normal humans, like the three of us, would regard as sustained serious pressure. Are we 50 days out from November 5? There is absolutely no way, in my judgment, given the consequential nature of this election, that this administration, with Iran perceived to be pulling the strings, even though it may want de-escalation, Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy, is going to pressure the Israelis in the 50-plus days that remain before this very consequential election.
And the Israelis know this and are cynically using that situation, rather, to give themselves a freer hand.
Hussein Ibish and Aaron David Miller, we thank you both for your insights and for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.